Hi, I don't really know how to start this video. I read Shatterpoint. Let's talk about what I thought of it. If you missed my last video, I highly recommend that you go check it out before this one. You can get to it by clicking the iCard. But in that video, I just basically go over the story of how I got started in reading Star Wars books and just the whole journey that led me to this point. Also in that video, I mentioned that I'm going to be starting a new series, which this is the first episode of. So, since this is the first episode, let me explain what this series is going to be. I have recently become obsessed with the Star Wars Expanded Universe, and I want to play, read, or watch everything that it has to offer. I started with Shatterpoint, and I've already bought a bunch of other books that I intend to read, which brings me to this series. Each new book that I read, I will be creating a video about my thoughts on it. Hence the name of this series, My Thoughts on Blank. So then, what will my thoughts entail? Well, the videos of these series will be broken down into 3 main parts, and the first one is just my overall thoughts of the book. This section will really just me going over my general thoughts on the book. If I liked it, if I didn't like it, what it's generally about, and if I think you should read it. Then, the second section will be the spoiler section, where I really go over the plot of the book and get really down into the nitty-gritty about what I did and didn't like about it. Then, the third and final part will be the conclusion. And in this section, I will be giving my final thoughts on the book and give any predictions for future books if it's part of a main series, as well as giving the book a rating. So, at the end, each book will get a ranking and be placed into a chart of all the books. So, as the series goes on, you'll be able to really see my opinions on the books and know where I would rank them, which ones are my favorite and which ones are my least favorite. In each video, I will also include a time code after the first section to skip to the ranking if you intend to read the book and don't want to be spoiled on it, but are just curious where I would rank it. So that basically sums up what this series is going to be. So without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on Shatterpoint. So should you read Shatterpoint? The answer is almost certainly a yes. There are only a few cases where I wouldn't recommend it to you. For example, if you hate everything Star Wars and just can't stand the whole franchise, I probably don't think you would enjoy this book much. Or even if you love Star Wars but absolutely hate reading and it makes you just want to rip your eyeballs out, well, then this probably isn't for you. Or if you love Star Wars but hate everything that is before A New Hope, then I guess you really don't even deserve to enjoy this book. Or if you're a commie alien from outer space, then I wouldn't pick this up. So if you don't fall into any of those categories, or really even if you do, this book is most certainly worth a read. One of my favorite things about this book was the action. Now, in this book, the action is most certainly not constant, but when action scenes are going on, they are so good. They are fast-paced, and it just keeps flowing from one hit to the next. It is so epic and so well done. So good on you, Matt Stover. The action is top-notch. My biggest complaint with this book is that for some reason, the author, Matthew Stover, sometimes decides in a battle to list off every weapon and ship that is involved. And while that is cool, it can get somewhat tiresome reading off just numbers of weapons that I don't really even know what they mean. This book centers around Mace Windu during the Clone Wars. But that description can kind of sort of be a bit misleading because the Clone Wars aren't really a part of the story much at all and kind of just happen to be going on at the same time. Mace sets out on a journey to his home planet of Harun Kal, and gosh darn it, it is so much easier when I'm just reading a book and I don't actually have to know how to pronounce things. Mace sets out to his home planet of Harun Kal because there has been a massacre and a message found from his former Padawan, Depa Billaba. And just a side note, I totally did not realize until looking up visuals for this video that Depa actually appears in both episodes 1 and 2 and an episode of the Clone Wars. But anyways, a message is found from Depa that says,
I have become the darkness in the jungle. I know you will come for me, Mace. You should never have sent me here, and I should never have come. But what's done can never be undone. I know you think I've gone mad, but I haven't. What's happened to me is worse. I've gone sane. That's why you'll come, Mace. That's why you'll have to. Because nothing is more dangerous than a Jedi who's finally sane.
So, yeah, things don't exactly look too good for Deppa. So, Mace takes it upon himself to bring her in. And thus we follow Mace on a journey through the jungles of Harun Kal on a mission trying to find his former Padawan, Master Deppa Billaba. I just have to say, Mace is such a great character. I just love how rough he is. And in this book specifically, he has some really awesome lines. Like, take this one for example.
You are better prepared than most.
Mace balanced his lightsaber on his palm.
But like all others, you've forgotten the one piece of equipment that would truly do you any good.
Yeah? What's that? Mace's voice went cold, and his eyes went colder.
An ambulance.
If I was going to attack somebody and then they said that, I might just all of a sudden need a new change of pants. And honestly, my favorite thing about this book was just Mace's interpersonal conflict about fighting and war, and the choices one makes in precarious situations. All the Star Wars movies, while they do have war in the name, never really managed to feel actually like a war. In the original trilogy, we have the Rebels versus the Stormtroopers, but the Stormtroopers are just essentially faceless enemies that can be straight up slaughtered and you wouldn't bat an eye. Then in the prequels, it's even worse. We have the clones versus the droids, and while Clone Wars did an excellent job at exploring the clones and truly making them feel like people, in the movies, however, we literally just have robots from a factory versus a faceless / one-face army. You never really feel the oomph of war, and it always just kind of feels more like a game. That is not the case, however, in this book, because in this book you have the Summertime War, the civil war amongst the people of Harun Kal, and it truly feels like a war. At every moment you truly feel the despair and loss that war brings, and anytime there is any sort of loss on either side, you really feel it. It's a really well done dive into Mace's character, and just a really interesting story. But if you haven't read it yet, that's all you're getting. So just go read the book and then come back and finish watching this video after. If you want to go pick up the book, there will be a link down in the description to where you can buy it. Or if you don't want to do that, you can get it from a library. Or even if you just don't want to read it for whatever reason, I guess you can just keep watching this video and get all the spoilers. What do I care? It gives me watch time. But just a warning that if you don't want the spoilers, they will be in the next section. So if you want to just skip to the ranking, you can skip to this time code here. Motion tracking. And then you can see where I rank it. So let's move on to section 2. The main reason why I love Mace so much is that he can be a main character who is just mean. Well, I don't know that mean's really the right way to say it. He's just not nice. On to the nitty and gritty of this thing, and I just love Mace's character. He is just so deep and interesting, and the choices he has to make in this book are just so captivating to me. If Mace Windu doesn't like you, you will know it. And he was just such a good pick for a main character of this story, because he is just a brute force that can go in and get the job done. But along the way, he almost loses himself to the dark side because of his love for a good fight. As stated earlier, I really loved just the feeling of war in this book. And I think one of the scenes that showed that the best was when Mace saves the Balwai kids and then is turning them over to their parents when they are then attacked by Carvaster and the Korunai. Everything in this scene is just done so well. From Terrell finding out that his dad is dead, to the Balwai getting slaughtered by the Korunai, and then finally to Carvaster slaughtering Terrell. I mean, it's...
Don't do it, Car. Put the boy down. He might as well have not bothered. Vaster's answering snarl translated in Mace's mind as, "When I am done with him." The shield strapped to Vaster's left arm made a mirrored halo over Terrell's head. But now, the other angled toward where Besh and Chalk lay. "Look there, and see what sort of creature I hold." "He's not some creature," Mace responded, with reflexive certainty. "He's a boy. His name His name is... Mace's voice trailed away as his eyes finally made sense of what Vaster was pointing at. Terrell. Besh and Chalk lay on the stone floor midway between where Vaster stood holding Terrell and where Keela, Pell, and the two younger boys cowered. Someone had been hacking, inexpertly, but with considerable enthusiasm, at the two helpless Coronae. On the floor below Terrell's dangling feet was a short stub of knife. Terrell's knife. "Oh, Terrell," he said, letting his lightsabers swallow their blades. "Terrell, what have you done?"
Don't worry. He won't do it again.
Mace could only roar a futile denial as Vaster struck. The vibro shield sank deep into Terrell's body. And as the lore pellic ripped the life out of the boy, the blood fever told Mace what he should have done differently. He should have killed Car Vaster.
I'm gonna be honest, I have never actually cried while reading a book, but this scene definitely had me on the verge of tears. It was intense. I didn't really love the final battle in this book as much as the rest of it. As soon as it changed from a more personal story around Mace to more of a planet-wide battle, I kind of lost a little bit of interest. Now, don't get me wrong, I still very much enjoyed it and thought it was still very good, but don't think it needed to go in that direction, and would have been better if it just stayed as more of a Mace-centric story. So yeah, I think that's all I really have to say about it. This book isn't really part of any particular series, so I don't really got any predictions, so I guess that means moving on to the ranking. I'm going to be putting all the books I rank into a tier list, which is definitely not an idea I'm stealing from Seamus's Gorman Disney sequel series. I don't know. I don't even know why you would accuse me of that. That's ridiculous. Down here at the bottom, we will have Burn It tier. And this is the tier where these books really, you'd be better off using them as fuel for a fire rather than reading them. The next tier we have is, I have a bad feeling about this tier. These books aren't really good, but they aren't absolute garbage. Then the next tier we have is, it's fine, I guess. And this is for books that are fine, I guess. The fourth tier we have is going to be Meh tier, for just books that are a solid meh. Then the next tier we have is, hey, that is pretty good. This is for books that are starting to get better, and you should probably read them if you haven't. Then the second to last tier we have is excellent, and these are definitely books that if you haven't read them before, you should pick up if you got some spare time. And finally, the top tier is must-read tier. These are all the books that if you are a fan of Star Wars, you owe it to yourself to read. Now, where to put Shatterpoint? I did love it overall, but I did have some minor gripes that keeps it from perfect. So I'm going to give it a 9.0 out of 10. Which puts it right at the top of the excellent tier. It's not a must-read, but it is certainly worth picking up if you got some spare time on your hands. And hey, as of right now, it's the top book on the list, so that's good. Next week, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on Heir to the Empire, so if you want to be sure that you don't miss that, subscribe and hit the notification bell. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and honestly, it really does make me happy to think that people are enjoying my videos. I mean, it's just kind of awesome. You can click over here to go watch my video about how I got introduced into the Star Wars Expanded Universe, or you can click over here to go watch my video about Heir to the Empire once that's out. For the first week, though, it'll be some other mystery video, and if you're not here in the first week, well, too bad for you. I guess you won't know what that video was. But anyways, thanks you again so much for watching. I'll see you next time. On to the nitty gritty. On to the nitty gritty? That's not what I meant to say. On to the nitty and gritty. That's a weird thing to say. On to the nitty and gritty of this thing. I don't like that line. That's a weird line. On to the nitty and gritty of this thing. That sounds so weird. Okay.